The morning air was cold and still, heavy with the kind of silence that seems to hold its breath before something breaks. In the middle of a quiet suburban street, a small boy stood motionless beside a large brown dog. His hands were stuffed deep into the pocket of a faded blue hoodie, his lips pressed tight, and his eyes, wide, hollow, and distant, stared at nothing. The dog sat close, almost protectively, his body tense and alert, as if guarding something unseen. Neighbors peered through their windows, curious but hesitant. No one knew the boy's name. No one had ever seen him speak. But that morning, the sight of him and his dog standing there would become the beginning of a story that would shake the entire town. A story of loss, loyalty, and a secret buried deeper than anyone could have imagined. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the unbreakable loyalty of animals, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Pawsitive Tales. Every story we tell brings light to the unseen bonds that make us human. The boy's name was Eli. He had moved into the neighborhood only 3 months ago with his mother, a quiet woman who rarely came out of the small grey house at the corner of Pine Street. Eli didn't play with the other children, didn't answer when spoken to, and often wandered with his dog, Max, a strong, watchful mixed breed with warm amber eyes and a scar on his muzzle that hinted at a hard past. While other kids rode bikes and laughed, Eli would sit under the old oak tree near the park, tracing lines in the dirt with a stick while Max rested beside him, always keeping his eyes on the boy. People whispered that Eli was mute, or that he had seen something that had taken away his words. Teachers at the local school said he didn't respond, not even to gentle coaxing. He didn't write, didn't draw, and didn't cry. But Max seemed to understand him. The dog followed every gesture, every glance. It was as though Eli's silence spoke through the animal. When Eli froze at sudden noises, Max would press close, shielding him. When Eli wandered too near the road, Max would tug him back by the sleeve. Their connection went beyond loyalty. It was something raw, something wordless, yet deep as grief. No one truly knew what had happened to Eli before he came to Pine Street. But the faint bruises that sometimes marked his wrists told stories his lips could not. The neighbors ignored what they saw, telling themselves it wasn't their place to ask. And yet every night, Max's low, mournful howls echoed through the quiet streets, a sound that carried a pain more human than animal. One afternoon, as the autumn light dimmed and the trees turned copper, a police car pulled up to the house. 2 officers knocked, but no one answered. Through the window, they saw broken dishes on the floor and a chair tipped over. Then from the back door came a sound, Max barking frantically, his claws scratching the wooden door. The officers forced it open and found Eli standing in the kitchen, barefoot, clutching Max's collar. His mother was nowhere to be found. That night became the talk of the town. The police searched for hours. They found no sign of the mother, no note, no struggle. Only Max, who refused to leave the boy's side, even as social workers tried to approach him. Every time someone reached for Eli, Max growled low and dangerous, his eyes flicking between strangers and the trembling boy. Finally, one of the officers, an older man named Daniel, who had seen too much in his years, knelt and whispered softly to the dog, offering his hand. Max hesitated, then slowly placed his paw in Daniel's palm. That was the first step toward uncovering what really happened. Eli was placed in Daniel's temporary custody while the investigation continued. The boy remained silent, but Max's behavior spoke volumes. The dog would pace near windows at night, staring out into the darkness, occasionally barking toward the woods behind their neighborhood. Daniel began to suspect that the truth was out there, literally, somewhere in those trees. Weeks passed. The search for Eli's mother went cold. People assumed she had run away or met some dark fate. But one cold evening, as fog rolled across the backyards, Max began to bark again, louder, more desperate than ever before. He tugged at Eli's sleeve, whining, pulling him toward the door. Eli didn't resist. He grabbed his flashlight and, without a word, followed Max into the night. Daniel noticed the front door open and rushed after them. The dog led them through the woods, weaving between trees, as if following a trail only he could smell. The deeper they went, the heavier the silence grew. Finally, Max stopped at a small clearing near an old half-collapsed shed. He began to dig furiously, dirt flying into the cold air. Daniel, realizing what might be happening, called for backup. But before anyone arrived, Max uncovered a torn piece of fabric. It was part of a woman's dress. Eli fell to his knees beside it, his small hands trembling, his breath shallow. Then for the first time he whispered a word, so soft Daniel almost didn't hear it. Mom. That one word shattered the wall of silence that had surrounded him for months. The ground beneath them told the rest of the story. Investigators confirmed that Eli's mother had been buried there, a victim of domestic violence by a man she had been hiding from, a man who had found them after they moved to Pine Street. She had hidden Eli and Max in a closet that night before confronting her attacker, and it was Max who had led the boy to safety after it was over. Eli hadn't spoken since. Trauma had sealed his voice, but Max had carried the secret all along. Every bark, every stare into the woods, every restless night, it had all been his way of trying to show the truth. The dog had never stopped protecting his boy, or the memory of the woman who had saved them both. When the truth came out, the town that once ignored the quiet child began to change. Neighbors brought food, offered help, and for the first time spoke softly and kindly to the boy who had endured so much. Eli, still shy and silent most days, began to find small pieces of peace again through Max. He started drawing pictures of him, playing fetch, even smiling when Max rolled over or barked at squirrels. Slowly, through patience and love, he began to heal. Months later, Daniel adopted Eli officially. On the day the papers were signed, Eli looked up at him and whispered another word. Dad. Daniel, overwhelmed, nodded through tears. Max wagged his tail beside them as if he'd been waiting all along for that moment. Years passed, and Eli grew stronger, taller, and braver. He spoke more often now, especially about Max, the hero who had never left his side. Every scar, every fear, every memory was softened by the warmth of that dog's presence. They became inseparable, a boy who once lived in silence, and the dog who gave him back his voice. When people in town spoke of them, they didn't talk about tragedy anymore. They talked about love, about how a dog's heart can hold more loyalty and courage than most humans could ever imagine. And every time Eli walked down Pine Street, Max by his side, people would stop and smile. They didn't see a broken boy anymore. They saw a survivor, and his guardian angel on 4 legs. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Pawsitive Tales. Every view and every word of kindness helps us keep telling stories that remind the world what true love and loyalty look like. Special request? Tell us in the comments, what's the one moment when an animal's love changed your life forever?